Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mike Elko, the Texas A&M Aggies, getting active in the transfer portal, landing the commitment from one of the top cornerbacks in this transfer portal cycle, Will Lee, coming over from Kansas State. And for Will Lee, I think what excites Texas A&M fans the most, or at least what excites me the most about Will Lee, a guy that I've watched a decent amount of, is you're not only getting a good football player right now, but the potential of what Will Lee can be, getting the right development, that's really where I think the value is with a guy like Will Lee, dripping with potential, very fluid athlete, extremely long arms, kind of checks all the boxes of what college programs and NFL teams want in their cornerbacks. Will Lee and the potential of what he can be, getting developed by Mike Elko, one of the best in the business, is a really exciting proposition. Going to get into Will Lee and then talk about a few other targets for the Texas A&M Aggies that they're hosting this weekend. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. In the last couple of days, the transfer portal has been extremely busy, and it's been a blast covering all of these commitments. But the amount of support you guys have shown, it means a lot. I love doing this. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And for Texas A&M fans, and we're going to be talking a lot about this program the next couple of weeks, as Mike Elko going to be getting his guys into this program through the transfer portal. Again, if you all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into Will Lee. Now, 2022 was a JUCO prospect, one of the best JUCO kids coming out of that class, goes to Kansas State and has a really good year, right? 6 passes defended, 2 interceptions, faced 36 targets, only gave up 23 catches. The big thing with Will Lee, what he needs to clean up is does give up the big play. And Kansas State fans will tell you this as well. He's an aggressive cornerback that lets some people get behind him at times. But from a trait standpoint, excuse me, from what he can be as a cornerback, I think a lot of Kansas State fans would say they were really excited about the development that Will Lee could have. And now he goes to College Station. Mike Elko, going back to his time at Duke, I mean, elite secondaries that don't give up the big play, are extremely stingy underneath. If Will Lee gets the right development, you're looking at a guy that is an NFL prospect, an all SEC caliber guy. There is a reason when Will Lee's name hits the transfer portal, there were flooded with Power 5 offers, because what he offers in terms of upside and what he can be as a cornerback is very high. And again, not necessarily the best year in 2023 as he was adjusting from the JUCO to the Power 5 level, a guy that has all the traits in the world. And when you turn on the film, you're getting a guy 6'3", extremely long arms. Those things have to be over 33 inches. Gets his hands on opposing wide receivers. Gets his hands on a lot of footballs. And what's most special about the frame that he has is he's also a very fluid athlete in terms of breaking on footballs and sticking with wide receivers. So if you can kind of clean up some of that stuff in terms of giving up the big play, you're looking at a cornerback that can be really good for the Texas A&M Aggies. And another guy that kind of popped up in the transfer portal that I wouldn't be surprised if Texas A&M takes a look at. Now, Texas A&M hasn't offered, from my knowledge, hasn't been on campus yet, but Jalen Stinson coming over from Duke. This is Mike Elko did a phenomenal job with that Duke defense, specifically in the secondary. And you're looking at a guy in Jalen Stinson who's extremely versatile, a little bit on the undersized there, 5'8", 180, very good tackler in the box, can play that nickel, can play that box safety role, and he's extremely physical. And again, you take a look at matching up with some of those slot wide receivers, the guys who are super twitched up. Jalen Stinson, I think, has the best ability to kind of do that. So you got a boundary cornerback in Will Lee who has a ton of length and a ton of ball skills, and you could complement him with a guy like Jalen Stinson, who at that nickel role was one of the better players in the ACC. I certainly would not be surprised for Mike Elko to kick the tires on his former player in Jalen Stinson. And I want to talk about the 2 guys that Texas A&M has had on campus this week and would be massive commitments. I'm going to start with Colin Lacey. Coming from South Alabama, 91 catches, 1,300 yards, one of the most productive wide receivers at the FBS level. And you turn on the film for Colin Lacey, he's a box checker, right? 5'10", 190, creates separation all 3 levels of his route tree, can work vertically down the field. But I think the biggest value you get with a guy in Colin Lacey is the yards after the catch. And you have Aeneas Smith going to the NFL draft, looking to kind of replace that kind of production, a guy that gets open, creates separation, and is really good after the catch. I mean, that is Colin Lacey, and I think he could provide that skill set to this Texas A&M offense. And I always say this, getting a guy that can create separation early and work after the catch is a quarterback's best friend. It makes it easy on a quarterback. So whether it's Connor Wigman, whether they go into the transfer portal, you're getting a wide receiver that's going to make life very, very easy for his quarterback. Colin Lacey, I think, would be a massive addition to this Texas A&M team. And the last guy they had on campus that I'd be taking a look at is Javon Harvey. And I believe this was their first offer at the wide receiver position Texas A&M made, coming over from Old Dominion. Not necessarily the numbers and production that a guy like Colin Lacey has, but can work vertically down the field. And there's a guy that, quite frankly, I'll trust Mike Elko and his staff's evaluation on a guy like Javon Harvey. And one of the last comments I want to make with Mike Elko, and we've talked about this a little bit, Mike Elko is one of the best in terms of evaluating talent. When he was at Duke, I mean, he, through the transfer portal, completely flipped this team around. This was a team that went 2-9. Mike Elko takes it over. They go 9-4. And a lot of those guys were contributors that he had through the transfer portal. And I think one of the hardest parts about using the transfer portal and using it effectively is identifying the guys that are going to be able to come in and make plays and be consistent playmakers for this program. And I think Mike Elko has a proven track record of doing that. And going back to Will Lee, what excites me most is a guy that has all the traits in the world of being an all-SEC caliber cornerback, an NFL draft pick. And then you're pairing him up with Mike Elko, who, again, is one of the better developers of players in all of college football. And we said this, Texas A&M, what they need to clean up is getting the best out of the players on this roster. This was a roster that was one of the most talented teams in the country the last couple of years and just never really performed like that. And the player development on the offensive line, in the back end, it never really was there. For Mike Elko, it's going to be there. So you get guys like Will Lee who are super talented, and you combine that with the development that Mike Elko can offer these guys. That's what you're excited for Texas A&M. Now, a few position groups that I wouldn't be surprised if Texas A&M targets in the next couple of weeks. Got a lot of good offensive linemen on the board. This is probably one of the more talented offensive line transfer portal cycles that we've seen. And I think Texas A&M wants to add some depth and some veteran talent onto this offensive line. Mike Elko, a coach that prioritizes the trenches on both sides of the football, would not be surprised if you see Texas A&M bring in a few offensive linemen that could be plug-and-play starters in 2024, and then also on the defensive line. And a lot of this is playing roster defense, trying to keep some of these talented guys within the program, and we'll see how that turns out. Anyway you cut it, Mike Elko, I think, is going to have a talented roster, and you look at what Mike Elko can do with a talented roster. That's what you're most excited for. He took a Duke team that had no talent on the roster, and they went 9-4 in the ACC. So you're really excited to see what Mike Elko can do with all this talent that's going to be on his roster. First domino to fall is Will Lee. I'm sure that's not going to be the last of it again. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Wanted to hop on, talk about the first Texas A&M transfer commit. Appreciate y'all. We'll have a lot more to talk about with Texas A&M in the next couple of days, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.